Hello, my name is Nocturnal Lycan, and today I shall be ranking Dragon's Dogma's various bosses and enemies with multiple health bars. My overall basis of ranking for the various enemies and bosses in this game relies entirely off of their ability to provide difficulty for the player at any standpoint and or position in the game. And now, this is from my personal experiences that I have gathered from years of playing this game, so if you disagree, that is perfectly fine. I'd love to hear what your own personal listing would be for each and every one of these guys. It's just what I think. So I hope you enjoy this video, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thank you, and enjoy. Kicking off our list at number 31 is the Encampment Hydra. Now, for obvious reasons, this guy's at the bottom, since, of course, he only has 3 attacks, each only doing a very minimal amount of damage, and he only requires about 8 or 9 hits before you pop his head off and kill him, or Mercedes will throw a barrel and kill him instantly, being the most easy and simple of enemies to defeat. The spot of number 30 belongs to Golems. Now, though they are composed of stone and are quite massive beings, they're relatively easy to defeat, even for lower level players. They only have a set of about 3 offensive maneuvers, 2 of which being physical, one being the one that was just presented where they shoot a variety of magical beams out that cause multiple explosions, none of which really do that much damage. All you have to do to kill them is destroy the 7 of the magical discs that reside on their anatomy, which is a very simple task for any player. Aside from that, there's really nothing to note. Number 29 is a rendition of a creature that is in the base game, the Cyclopes. Now, this is the Black Bitter Isle version, where the only difference is that it has 2 health bars and it does less damage. And of course, these guys are much rarer to encounter, but that really makes no difference to your experience. My number 28 can be considered controversial amongst the Dragon's Dogma community, but again, this is my list and my personal experiences placed onto it. I put Death here because he only has 2 offensive maneuvers, and both of them are quite simple to evade. One being his Lantern of Rest, and the other being his insta-kill swipe. Each of them, sure, can be devastating if you fall under them, but again, as I said, they're so easy to evade, it's almost impossible to be subdued by him. And aside from that, he's nothing more than a giant hitbox that runs away and reappears. The Cyclopes of Granzis take the spot of number 27. Now, for lower level players, these guys would be quite a chore to dispatch of, seeing as how they have 3 health bars, and their health is relatively difficult to deplete if you do not have high damaging weapons or skills that take away a lot of health points. And with this, it is really difficult. Though there is one critical area, the head, of course because of the eye, where you will do a lot more damage and considerably affect their health. However, there can be Armour Cyclopes, which is the only way to remove the helmet is if you climb atop the head and make them grab the helmet off. At this point, you would have to jump to avoid the grab, though if you do fall into it, it's relatively easy to escape. And if you don't, well, if you have low health, I suggest stocking up on curatives. If not, you're basically screwed because it is somewhat damaging. After this, they'll enter a state of rage where their speed, be it movement and attack, is increased significantly and can be quite more difficult to land a successful hit on them. However, it is not exactly the most difficult of tasks to accomplish, for if you just stay away, safe distance that is, and keep attacking in a guerrilla warfare style, you'll be able to dispatch of it quite simply. So, that is the Cyclops. Number 26 is the Chimera. Now, these are the bane of new coming players to Dragon's Dogma. That's due to the fact that these are unlike any other enemies that they would have faced at the beginning point of the game, seeing as how they attack in quick succession with mighty attacks from the lion, physically, and devastating attacks magically from the goat, along with the snake to deplete their health continuously with their venom that they spray out. In addition, they have 4 health bars, which are somewhat difficult to take down and deplete, unless you have them in a critical state. And the worst thing is, they're widespread throughout the wild. So if they encounter them, they're pretty much guaranteed a death, unless they are exceptional at the game or have equipment that can destroy one in under about 2 minutes. Aside from that, though, these are relatively easy enemies. The Gazer sees past its competition and takes the spot of 25 due to the fact that it has blinding abilities that can screw you over for a tiny bit, and summons various tentacles, kind of like the evil eye, that shoot out destructive magic, be it an electric bolt, fire, or ice spikes, all of which, though, can jack you up if you do not have a lot of health or cannot escape it. Aside from that, though, they're pretty run-of-the-mill to get rid of. You know, huge opening for you to climb onto, where there's the eye, you hit it, stagger them, send it into a critical state that can either instantly deplete it, or it will stagger and summon various tentacles that focus and concentrate on a magical beam for an assortment of time. And after that, if you kill them all, you could hit that crystal, send multiple shards to the eye, allowing you to instantly kill it there. So, all in all, it is a relatively simple enemy to defeat, though slides past the competition. The Griffon dives in for the spot of number 24. Now, these creatures are pretty much chimeras with wings, offering devastating attacks to lower level and mid-level players with much speed and a vast variety of attacks. With that, they can alternate between going airborne or landing on the ground. Sometimes when they dive, they render you in a sense of staggered motion, allowing them to seize the opportunity and attack you. Now, if you are a close quarters vocation, such as a fighter or warrior, it shall be somewhat difficult to hold on, seeing how they constantly move and go in the air. But if you do manage, cling on to the head, for that is their critical spot, and it will quite significantly damage them. However, mind you, if you get close enough and they start flapping their wings, you shall start taking considerable levels of electric damage. But aside from that, they are quite simple to dispatch of. Number 23 for me would have to be the Liches. Now these guys are just pretty much like whites, except they have 2 health bars and much stronger magical attacks and abilities, being able to physically debilitate you with various attacks, and offering very, very powerful destructive capabilities like Bolide and whatnot. They are quite difficult. Also, to their will, they can summon a Legion of Dead to fend for themselves, whilst they regenerate and or hover, making it somewhat difficult to dispatch of them. Here we have the most feeble of the 3 dragons that are in the base game, the Wyrm. But do not let that fool you, for he is nowhere near a weak enemy. No, rather for low-level players, he would be quite the challenge, and you would take much pride in even getting down his 2nd health bar. Now, as I said, he is the weakest of them all, but he still can do quite a bit of damage and pack a punch physically, seeing how he has all the attacks a Drake would have, and can cast a vast variety of spells, ranging from a fire spell to an ice spell to an electricity spell, all of which being relatively damaging to the player. And in addition, he can cast high equivacy and other physical debilitations, all with an immense timing, in fact. So be on the lookout for that. Of course, he can silence you or skill stifle you, and he can do all of these with immense speed. As opposed to Fire Breath, though, he expels a gust of frigid air that can freeze the player, or Ice Breath, which, in all honesty, is probably worse than Fire. In my opinion, anyway. And with that, that is the Wyrm. He is not exactly the hardest of enemies, but without a doubt, for a low-level player, you are going to have one heck of a challenge. So, be on the lookout and consider fighting this enemy if you see him. Number 21 is the Wyvern, the second dragon on this list that is in the base game. Now, unlike the Wyrm, he is incapable of casting any sense of magical incantations or spells, but, like the Drake, he can do the same exact moveset, the charge, the bite, the tail whip, the grab, all of that. However, his unique quality, I guess, in combat would be the fact that he covers the entire expanse of the arena or setting that you are in, very frequently with much speed and alacrity. And he can do dives that stagger the player, and, in addition, instead of expelling fire and or ice, he shoots out a gust of air that is similar to Maelstrom and can sweep you up in the air and deal quite a bit of damage. Another factor that is distinct is how he has his heart placed on his back, making it somewhat more difficult to attack it and send him in a state of critical pain compared to the other two dragons in the game. Completing the trilogy of dragons, here we have the Drake. This is probably the most commonly found of all dragon species in the base game, and without a doubt, the hardest. Now, it lacks the other abilities that the other ones have, but in return it has higher damage resistance and offers a lot more damage to the player. As I said before, the other two species of dragon have the same exact attack patterns physically as this, with the exception of Fire Breath. That is true. Now, of course, what attack patterns are they? Well, there is the grab, there is the bite to the left or right, there's the dragon swoop, there's the dragon crash landing, and then there's the dragon charge. Along with that, he can silence you and or skill stifle you, both of which will debilitate you and kind of hurt you in the battle, or the course of battle. Now, along with this, he has a lot of health bars, and again, he has high damage resistance. So for low-level players, please stay away unless you know you're really good at this game and can handle him. Or even mid-level players, be very cautious and stock up on curatives if you are not more than adequate at it. For this is a very tough opponent for that category, but nonetheless, a great one. However, is nothing more than a wee bab amongst the other members on this list. Ugh, these freaking things. These abominations of optometry would easily take the spot for number 19. That is because they offer an immense challenge for mid-level players and or low-level players alike. Seeing how they constantly coat themselves in a magical barrier that nullifies all physical and magical damage, it can be quite hard and vexing for a player to even dare to fight these things. There are only a very few select moments when they do not enter this state, or where you can actually harm them. And that is when they're charging up their blind attack, or when they focus on the shard attack. Both of these times will enter a state where they are very vulnerable, and you could go in for the kill. Other times you would have to fight their tentacles, which shoot the common 3 types of magic at you constantly, but killing enough of those will make it enter one of those states. A very vexing challenge. Here we have an overly glorified variant of the Chimera. However, though, do not be fooled. This creature has a vast variety of attacks and new capabilities that... Oh, who am I kidding? Of course not. No, but truly it has a lot more health, and it does a bit more damage. Big surprise. Though, two new abilities have been added on. The goat can now heal itself whenever it takes considerable amounts of damage, and the snake can regenerate throughout the course of battle. Also, the snake now expels a red venom that does a lot more damage, and depletes health much faster. Aside from that, the creature is just tougher in the overall aspect of combat. Aside from that, there's nothing special to note, and allows it to slip past a few other of the contestants amongst this list, but nothing remarkable and outstanding. Number 17, we have Grigori, or the Great Dragon. Now, just like any other RPG where they have the big main antagonist of the quest line, he is very underpowered, or much weaker than he actually should be, or as they've been displaying throughout the course of the story and narrative. I mean, they build it up throughout multiple stages towards the end, before you can even physically fight him, where you have to run away from him, or you have to jump bridges when he's leveling them, or shattering towers. You have to climb on his back and punch his heart. You go through multiple stages before you even get to fight him. It's kind of disappointing, but nonetheless, he does deserve the spot for number 17, due to the fact that he has the common moveset of any other Drake, physically, and he has a little few other additions. One where he can pull you off of his chest directly when you're on air or wherever you're grabbing, and, like the worm, can cast magical spells, though they're slightly stronger, just like his physical attacks. As for his maneuverability, he can leap around the entire arena, and due to his massive size, he covers much distance. Or he can just spin around and he'll hit you. But aside from that, there's nothing special to note. He's just like any other dragon, except when you do a certain amount of damage, he starts flying around and forces you to go on a ballista. That's the one specific thing about him. But aside from that, there's nothing special to note. He's basically a stronger version of a Drake. At number 16, we have the Cockatrices, the other massive bird of prey in this game. Just like the Griffin, it can alternate between going on the ground to attack you, or staying in the air. Whilst on the ground, it can deliver pretty powerful physical attacks, such as the charge or the peck. Whilst in air, it can expel fetid gusts of breath, that of which can either petrify you or blind you, both of which having devastating effects on you in battle, petrification more so, effortlessly making them an opponent that mid-level players and low-level players alike would want to reconsider fighting. I'm sure a multitude of you will disagree with this one, but I believe number 15 would be the Ur-Dragon. I just think he's not the strongest enemy in the game, nowhere near it. Does that mean he's weak or not difficult? No, by no means, but he's not exactly the strongest. I just see him as an amplified version of Grigori, I guess. He has multiple critical spots and a lot more health. He's a massive hitbox. That's about it, because everything else, every move he has, Grigori has. That's it, nothing special. th hardest enemy with multiple health bars would be, without a doubt, the Gorecyclopes. Well, their attack basis is pretty much the exact same as a regular Cyclops, except it's a bit faster paced. They have a longer chain of arm attacks when they get angry. They have more health bars out, obviously, a much higher damage resistance. They deal greater damage, and they have the ability to toss items at you. Also, it's much more difficult for close range vocations to harm them, seeing as how they pull you right off even when you're on their head, giving you very little time to jump or reattach. So all in all, they are pretty difficult enemies to face, and once they get you in their death grip, you're pretty much screwed, if you have very low health, that is. Slithering in at number 13, we have Archydras. These creatures are just like Hydras, except they have a lot, and I mean a lot more health. In addition, they do a slight bit more damage, as you guys could probably imagine by now. And their attack variety is a bit more intelligent, I guess. The AI is improved. Aside from that, though, there really is no difference. The rarity is just the same, since there's only one in the game you can fight, and that's in the Everfall. But, aside from that, really nothing else. The heads regenerate faster, have more health, they deal more damage, making up for a somewhat more difficult enemy. So that is the Archydra. Oh, alright. Here we have the Direwyrm, or the Thunderwyvern, as some people like to call it. It's just like the standard Wyvern, of course, though. It's coated in electricity, and has much higher health. Just like the Wyvern, it has a heart on its back, as opposed to like the chest or the stomach, so that makes it more difficult to reach it if you're a close quarters class. And along with that, it possesses some enhancements along the lines of its physical and offensive abilities. Otherwise, nothing remarkable, nothing all that special. Dark Bishops, having an expansive arsenal at their disposal, along with being accompanied by a cursed dragon, can easily take the spot of number 11. Now, Dark Bishops are pretty much like the ultimate form versions of Wights or Liches. They can cast a variety of magical spells, though there are very few that are amongst the line of destructive, such as fire and whatnot. Rather, they are debilitating or massively impacting, such as the Holy Wall one, which can deplete your health immensely by the second, or Malice Storm, which, if you're trapped in it, you're pretty much doomed for the entire fight, because unless you have tons of curatives that can fully restore your health, or you have the highest amount of health in the game, you're going to die from that. In addition, he can cast spells that which harm you, such as those little blood balls on the ground that would drain your health, or send you flying to the ground if you knock into them. Well, the Dark Bishop can cast himself inside of the anatomy of the dragon, be it deceased or be it alive. He readies it up for a good moment of time, so if you are able to reach him, that is, or access him, you should be able to stagger him, or prevent him from doing this if you deal sufficient damage. But if he makes it into the dragon's body, he will have access to all the spells that he has, and other ones such as Bolide, and can cast them at speeds that are somewhat incomprehensible. And, of course, he has the physical form of the dragon amplified, so with all of that combined, he can be a quite deadly and versatile foe to fight on the field. But, shall you kill the dragon while he's inside it, you shall send him to his critical state, which is, it's almost guaranteed that he shall be dead, if you have weapons that deal sufficient damage to him at this point. But, all in all, the Dark Bishop is beyond an adversary that you would want to consider fighting. Entering the top 10, we have the Living Armour to start us off. This is by far one of the most excruciating opponents for anybody to fight if you only rely on physical tactics and capabilities. The reasoning is because the game forces the player to use a combination or a culmination of both magical and physical properties to damage it. Now, for the first 5 health bars, if you can't deplete them, that is, seeing how he has a lot of health and high damage resistance, physical attacks will work entirely, and magical as well. But once you get to his spiritual state as seen, he will become resistant entirely to any physical or offensive strategies used. When he is in this state, he is only affected by magical damage, and it has to be quite effective and strong magical damage. Of course, enchantments will work too, but the enchantment only goes so far within its capabilities. As for his attacks, he has pretty much everything that a basic fighter or mystic knight would have at their disposal, ranging from Tusk Toss, Burst, Strike, Backward Slash, and of course, Stone Forest, which is all of them. They're quite deadly, especially when he starts using his chained combo sword attacks. So, be on the lookout for any of his strikes, for they will be quite deadly. Number 9. Eliminators. These Minotaur-like assailants are very tough opponents to fight on the field. Though they only have 5 health bars, it is incredibly tough to take down, for their damage resistance is through the roof. Along with that, it doesn't help they are paired with massively damaging attacks. Though it's not a vast variety, it is sparse enough to keep you on your feet, and they are sporadic in their doings. Now, they have only a few that can be somewhat predictable, but again, are very hard to dodge at other moments. They have their iconic charge, like a bull, and then up strike, that can take you down by 1,000. They have a chain of 2 combo hits, that is very, very damaging. You have a wind-up strike from the left or right. Then they have a very extended chain of attacks that goes on for a bit. I believe 5 hit attacks. That's quite deadly. Then, if you're pinned on the ground, they charge up their insta-kill hit, which is, chances are, unless you are a fighter, or if you're on an elevated incline, you're not going to escape, so you better have a wake stone, making these guys incredibly tough opponents and easily retaining the spot number 9. Number 8. Older Ogres. Older Ogres are pretty much just like the regular Ogres in the base game, except they're incredibly enhanced in every aspect imaginable. Health-wise, strength-wise, everything. Their defenses are improved, granting them higher damage resistance. Their health increased tenfold. Their strength, well, one hit at a much higher level can reduce you by a few thousand points once they go into their rage. Now, that does not necessarily mean they're unstoppable, but nonetheless, an opponent you'd want to stay away from unless you know you have equipment that is capable of killing it. All in all, these beasts are very powerful creatures, and beyond a worthy contender for this list. Number 7. Prisoner Cyclopes. We've come a long way from the first Cyclops on the list to the last, but trust me, there's a tremendous gap in power between them. Now, these ones, just like any other Cyclops in the game, have the basic set of attacks, which is the Club Sweep, the Bash, the Stomp, the Jump, and the Grab. Though, with the Gorecyclopes and this one, everything is amplified. Especially for this one. One attack can render you from 4,000 health to 2,000 in under a second, and be a whole game changer if you don't have any wake stones or curatives, so be very circumspect when fighting them. Another thing is, there's a vast increased amount of health. They have a multitude of health bars, each health bar being incredibly difficult and complex for a player at a mid to high level to deplete. And it doesn't even help that you can climb on the head, because every time they grab you, you have to jump at a much readier pace than that you would with regular Cyclops. When they do grab you, and if you manage to escape, you will still take damage due to the tremendous height. but when they do grab you, and you do not escape, you're pretty much doomed. So please, I say this with much knowledge, be careful when you're on top of the head of the prisoner's Cyclopes, for they will jack you up. But they are the rightful owner of spawn number 7 on this list, and a creature that I've come to respect over the years of playing. Number 6, Direwyrms. The Direwyrm, or Frostworm, is just like the Dire Wyvern. It's nothing more than an amplified version of the standard worm. Except, of course, it has a constant aura of frost surrounding it. But aside from that, it just has increased damage, like every other thing that is a superior rendition of a previously existing creature. And it has more health, and much higher damage resistance. Aside from that, nothing really special to note, aside from it having superior frost abilities that can really hamper you if you are out of stamina. But otherwise, nothing remarkable, but still a worthy contender on the list. Number 5, Cursed Dragons. Cursed Dragons are unexpectedly much more powerful than almost every other dragon type in this game. More powerful than the main antagonist dragon, which is kind of sad, seeing how they're deceased, undead versions. But by no means does that mean they're weak. No, their attacks can do easily over 1,000 damage with their various bite attacks, which are somewhat different from the regular dragons. Instead, it's a chain of 3, where it snaps forward, then right, and then left, or vice versa. Then, instead of expelling a form of ice, electricity, or fire, it expels this putrid breath that can come out in an explosion, sort of like how the Ur-Dragon and Grigori charge up their one where they stand on their hind legs. That can be quite devastating too. Now, as for health, they're kind of really resistant to almost any other type of damage, save fire and holy. Those two type can easily deplete their health, for that is what they're sort of impaired against. And aside from that, they only share one critical spot directly on their heart. That can easily be used to your advantage if you're running into a sort of tough patch in a fight against these guys. But no matter what, I would easily say that these are amongst the toughest of dragons in the game, and are a foe that you would really want to consider fighting at any level. Number 4, Damion. Damion in his first form is an opponent that is beyond difficult for players at mid to high levels. He has a vast variety of attacks, that of which are sporadic and spontaneous, that of which have not been seen by any other enemy in the game prior to him. He combines a variety of physical and magical maneuvers. His physical attacks can range from a punch to a spin kick, to an airdrop and dive where he veers off to the right, to a power slam, all of which can range in damage from 1,000 to almost 2,000. His magical attacks can be either multiple ice spikes being shot out in succession of 3 maneuvers, to multiple electric bolts, to multiple fireballs. Other magical attacks he has revolve around him lifting you up and surging you with a powerful blast that can drop your health to about 2,000 if you have 4,000, shooting out multiple shards that deal massive damage. And then when you get him to a more critical state of health, he starts pulling out the larger spells, such as Seism and Bolide, and then Frigger too. All of them are quite devastating. Not to mention, he has the maximum amount of health an enemy can have in the game, paired with his immense damage resistance, where the only spot that is somewhat critical is his head, which he can knock you off of it with either a kick or a surge of flame. It is almost impossible for a low-level player to even remotely damage or even hopefully kill Damion. Number 3. Diredrakes. Dire, or Firedrakes, are the third type of dragon amongst the dire dragon variety. They are without a doubt the most physically imposing of the three dragons, having attacks that can do in excess of 1000 damage with or without adequate defense, and are very, very quick within their successions when they attack. Now, though, must say, just like every other dragon, there is barely, in fact no difference within their attack variety. They have all the standard attacks a Drake would have, with the Dragon Crash, Dragon Charge, Dragon Bite, and so on. However, like the other dire ones, they pertain an aura of whatever element they are keen in around their body, which does additional damage if you get up close. Of course, by the name Firedrakes, it's fire. So they deal fire damage to you, not that much, but still considerable amounts if you get up close to them. Another key element that attributes to these dragons being the most deadly of them all is the fact that it has immense health, and of course, along with that, it extinguishes tons of damage. So, if you do not have a weapon that deals obscene amounts of damage in quick succession, this dragon will be one of the hardest, if not the hardest thing for you to kill in the moment granted. So, players of any level, be prepared and steadfast when encountering this beast, for you are in for one hell of a fight. Number 2. Garm Packs. Now this one may be a tad bit unfair, seeing as how I'm grouping it together, but I do this because almost every time you shall encounter a Garm, it'll be in a group of 2 or 3. Very rarely do you ever encounter one on its lonesome. But anyway, these creatures are incredibly tough and very strong. You do not have an entire variety of attacks. In fact, I think there's only 3 different attacks they have, which would be their uppercut, which is that can damage you severely, launching you into the air. And then there's the bite. That alone is enough to deplete, I think, somewhere around between 800 to almost 2,000 health. And not only that, but the fact that they group together and can blind you makes everything 8 times harder when you're in mid-battle. Their only critical spot is their head, which is, it can be quite easy to dispatch of one if you attack the head, but they do have strategies to get you off of them, and if there's 3, they'll knock you off of one another, making it hard to even kill one. So, with all these elements combined and the fact that they do have a pretty decent and lengthy amount of health, they are amongst one of the hardest things to get rid of in this game. They are such an annoyance, and every time they spawn in, they probably make even the higher level players want to run away. And finally, number 1. Damion, his true form. Damion in his second and or true form is without a doubt the single hardest boss in this game, at least from my personal opinion. He has attacks that are beyond obscene within their level of power and damage. And any mid-level to even high-level players that are not adequate at this game or familiar with its mechanics will have the absolute hardest time fighting this enemy, and it shall be the most excruciating and arduous time they've had playing this entire game. He only has one physical attack, which is a swoop, and his magical attacks have been amplified quite a bit, where he can spawn multiple combustions, friggers, and lightning strikes, all of which doing almost 1,000 damage, if not in excess of 1,000 damage. In addition, he has 2 massive metaphysical dragon arms he can use to crush you. They span across the entire arena that you are in. This accompanied by the fact that he has one of the highest, if not the highest, damage resistances in the game, accompanied by massive levels of health. He's without a doubt the single hardest enemy in the game, at least from my experiences playing this game. So, if you ever go back on Blackbitter Isle after killing Damion, be wary of what awaits you towards the end, for it is something that every player should fear. Hey everyone, really hope you guys enjoyed the video. I put a lot of time and effort into it, and I apologize if it's not the best or you didn't like it. I'm not the best at editing, so it's very likely. But I want to thank you for tuning in. I again hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it and what your own personal rankings would be, or why you disagree with some of mine. I'd like to take the time to thank this man right here for inspiring me and helping me decide upon which creatures should be where, at least some of them. He makes some really awesome Dragon's Dogma content, and he's an absolute god at the game, so please check his channel out. I can promise you will not be disappointed. But again, thank every single one of you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks, have a great day.